Welcome to AM. My name's Richard Conway, and this is the platform for age group multisport athletes to showcase their journeys. Here we are in 2022. This is episode 42, and on this episode we've got a young man from Canada who reached out before Christmas. I'd put a post out on one of the Facebook sites and he got in touch, and since he'd listened to a few of the earlier episodes, he said he'd like to come on and share his story. So James Lorenzen from Canada will be coming up. And he's got an interesting story, albeit a short one so far, but he's got big goals that he's set himself, both from a personal point of view and a multi-sport point of view. And it was really good to talk to him. I think it's probably one of the longest conversations that we've had, so hope you enjoy that. So back to it after the festive period. Great to see family and friends as usual. We had a blast. Too many late nights and too much alcohol, but if you can't enjoy yourself over the festive period, well, when can you do it? So we were still doing a little bit of training. The swimming pool was closed, so I hadn't swum for a fortnight, so that was a bit of a rude awakening when I got back into the pool, but we were still Zwifting and running, and we actually went and did a cross-country run with our club WBC, which was really nice because the weather was at the heady heights of 12 degrees and the sunshine was out, and although it was muddy underfoot, we had a really good time, so enjoyed that one. And we're back into the club swimming, and there'll be a track session coming up as well, so back to normality. As I said, over the Christmas period, wasn't much going on in the sporting world that I follow anyway, but as a Christmas tradition, we sat down and watched the World's Strongest Man. As is tradition in our house, we watch it every year, and I've done since the kids were little. And it was great to see young Tom Stoltman come away and become World's Strongest Man. We've watched him develop over several years, and it's all his hard work's paid off, so well done, Tom. The other thing that I've been watching is the cyclocross. Been really good, been lots of races going on, the ladies and the men's, and in the men's the big three were back, and the big three, if you're not aware in cyclocross terms, are Wout van Aert, Britain's Tom Pidcock and Mathieu van der Poel. They're all road cyclists as well, and it's been really good fun to watch them battle out against each other. And to be honest, Tom's won a few, but Wout van Aert is the unstoppable force at the moment, and it was only due to a couple of mechanical problems he had that he hasn't won everything. So but really entertaining, and in the ladies as well, really great racing, and Britain's Anna Kay has been up there. She's only a young rider, but she's been up there in the top 10, top 15, being placed, so it's great to see and great to watch. If you haven't seen any of it, Eurosport or GCN, and catch it on there, and it's only 50 minutes to an hour worth of racing, but some of the courses and their bike handling skills, I've said before, are just phenomenal, so give it a go. And then I was sent a message by Nikki Dick, who was on episode 33, and she wanted me to advertise some aquathons that are going on that herself and John Cowell are putting together. So you can go over to the website page and find all the information and the details on there. And John's website is Applied Triathlon Coaching, but he's also on Facebook, as is Nikki. And like I say, you can find all the dates and the information, and they're just held just outside of Nottingham, and I think there's about 5 in the series. So if you're interested, look it up, and get yourself there and have a go. So on to the main event. I hope you enjoy this as much as I did. I could have talked a lot longer. This is a young man from Canada who's fairly new to age group racing, but I'm sure he's going to have a great future once we all get back to proper racing. So hope you enjoy it. See you on the other side. Hi James.
Hi.
How are we doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Yeah, not so bad, not so bad. Thank you for joining us tonight, or your morning, I guess.
Yeah.
So you okay?
Yep.
Yeah. How's things over in Canada?
Good. The part of Canada I'm in is basically status quo right now, minus the fact you have to wear masks most places and have to show proof of vaccine to get in basically anywhere.
Yeah.
But other than that, status quo. Pools are open. Everything's fairly normal.
Cool. Well, that's good to hear. Everybody keeping safe. So you're a little bit about your background and how you got into multi-sport, I guess, from what looked like from your email, a massive interest in sport because there wasn't much else to do.
Yeah, like I said, I grew up in a little tiny farming community on the Canadian prairies, like 1,500 people. There's not a lot in town to do. There's no cities even really close to us, so got sucked into sport fairly young. I'm 4 years younger than my older brother, and he was already playing hockey, and I would just run around the ice rink and cause trouble. So my mom threw me on skates when I was 3.
Right.
So at least she could keep track of me if I was playing hockey. And then I played hockey all the way through till I graduated high school. Along the way, kind of did everything. Played baseball, soccer, curled for a while, volleyball, whatever. And everything I was just kind of like fairly mediocre at, just due to being naturally talented, but never like the best. So it's kind of the second fastest kid, the second best hockey player type thing, but never quite good enough to do anything with it. And then got to high school. Our high schools where I'm from are grades 7 through 12.
Okay.
And in grade 7, I thought I was going to be a sprinter. So I tried out for a track team in like the 100, 200, and 400, and only made the team in the 400. And then the next year decided to do the 400, 800, and 15. And nobody else wanted to do any of those events. So I just got on the team for free.
Whatever works,
and,
eh?
Yeah. And did reasonably well in the 1500 at like our regional meets. And kind of thought like, hey, I'm not bad at this. And there were some older boys from the same town I went to who had medaled at our provincial level cross country meets. And I was like, well, I can already run this far. I should try running cross country. Started actually doing some training for the first time in my life. And the first year I ran, I did all right. I think I finished like around 20th at our provincial meet for my age. And then kind of went back to playing hockey that winter. In the spring, ran track, but our provincial meet ended up getting canceled due to the teachers were on strike. So then spent that whole summer training again. And in the fall, ended up winning my first provincial cross country medal. Had a fairly successful cross country career after that. Got recruited to the University of Regina to go run cross country and track. And so basically right after I graduated high school, like July 1st, packed up my bag, moved to Regina, and started training with the team there. And they had a very like old school cross country coach who kind of he called it his Bible was this book called Running with the Buffalo, which was written by the University of Colorado's men's cross country coach in like 70s or 80s when they won like 7 men's national cross country championships. And basically his entire coaching philosophy was run far and run farther and run fast and run faster. Those were the 2 speeds and the 2 distances we ran. And it worked incredibly well for some athletes. Like he produced a couple national champions and like he had teams that medaled at nationals on the team level and stuff. But overall, it just kind of destroyed me. I got fairly fast, fairly quickly. And like 6 weeks after I joined the team, ran a 10K in like 35 and change.
Wow.
And then like immediately the next week started limping because my hips hurt and spent the next 2 weeks or 2 years, not really being able to run. I would kind of get over one injury, do a return to run, start doing some hard workouts again, and then something else would go. And then the process just kind of repeated for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I eventually just got like frustrated with it. But in the meantime, when all this was happening, a friend of mine who worked at a bike shop wanted me to get a bike so I could come ride with them. And I was like, well, I'm not really running. And gravel riding is really big in Saskatchewan because we don't have a ton of paved highway just because of the nature of where we are. It's very rural and agricultural. So he did some emailing, some of the reps for the bike stores, and found me a couple-year-old Norco cyclocross bike that had been like sitting in a rep's office that he was trying to get rid of and happened to be the right size for me. So I got a really good price on a like entry-level cross bike and kind of started riding that lots and did one gravel race and hated it. Thought like riding in the gravel stupid. Like you just go slow. I'd rather ride on the pavement and go faster. But kind of at the end of that summer, I was like, well, I don't want to give up running yet. And I like riding. Let's figure out how to speed swim and take up triathlon. That's kind of how I got into the world of triathlon.
Yeah. So you've got a great running background pedigree. That's a given. How did you find, biking's biking, isn't it? Mainly we've all done it from kids and stuff. How did you find learning to swim?
When I was a kid, like in Canada, basically every kid goes through the Red Cross Swim Kid swimming lessons programs.
Yeah.
So like I knew how to swim.
Yeah.
And like my parents had a cabin at a lake. So I spent a lot of my youth like in the water. So I thought it wouldn't be that hard. And I was like, oh, I'm fit. This is going to be easy to pick up, but it was horrible. Like I remember every once in a while I pick up my old training journals and flip throughs and look at some old workouts as kind of like a reminder of how far I came. And my very first swim workout I did, it was out of some book I had that I bought at a bookstore. And basically it was like the workout was warm up for 200 meters and then do some drills. And then the main set was just like an endurance set. So it was like pick a distance and swim it easy. And then over the weeks, make that distance longer and then do a 200-meter cool down. So I did my little 200 meters breaststroke warm up, did the drills, and then started doing front crawl for the main set. And I don't even think I made it a full 50 meters before I was like gasping for air and like couldn't breathe and had to switch back to breaststroke because it was the only thing I could do without just gassing out. Then kind of over that fall, things just got kind of progressively better and better. And then my first winter, I joined the local multi-sport club, had like classes on throughout the week. So I joined their Sunday night swim group and got some actual like technical coaching
Mm.
and helped give me some ideas for more workouts and stuff, and did that through the winter. That helped a ton.
Mm.
And I mean, my first year of racing, it didn't swim great, but I could just kind of lean on my fitness a little bit, and I still raced relatively well. And I'm sure a lot of people would think like, oh, 14 minutes for an open water 750 sounds fast, but come away since then. So in my head, it feels slow.
Yeah, yeah. But I guess from a starting point, that is pretty good, considering it wasn't one of your strengths. And how can you remember when you did your first triathlon? Was it a sprint distance? And after you swim, do you remember where you were relatively to the pack?
I did my first one I did was this local race they do every year called the Icebreaker. It's in a pool because it's in like May, and most of the lakes are either like still frozen or just starting to the ice break up, kind of where we live. And it's a wave start, so they stagger people by like 5 seconds within the lane.
Mm.
So it's hard to remember exactly where I was, but I think I was probably in the ballpark of like 10th to 20th.
Yeah.
Not exactly sure where, but not right up front, but not too far back.
Mm.
The race usually has around 80-ish people, so it would have been probably in the top quarter anyways.
Yeah, yeah. And no doubt you progressed and did quite well towards the end of it with your running ability.
Yeah, I remember, I don't know where I got off the bike, but I remember getting off the bike, and I had done brick workouts because I had read online how important they were. And I remember getting off the bike and racking my bike and standing there staring at my running shoes, and my brain couldn't figure out what it was supposed to do. Like it felt like forever I was standing there. I'm sure it was probably only 5 to 10 seconds, but I was just like in a fog basically. Finally figured out I should probably put my shoes on and go and run. And I think I ran myself up into like, I think I finished third in that one. And I mean, it's a local race. And
Yeah.
like, I think I probably was around like an hour 10 or whatever, which is reasonable, but lots of bigger regional races and stuff that probably wouldn't even get you in the top 5. So just based on the
but still a good start.
Field. Yeah.
And that inspired you to carry on and look for more races then?
Yeah, I was naturally really competitive from like, I came from a competitive track background, like I said. So I like to win, and I kind of realized that if I wanted to keep doing well, I had to get faster. And I started looking at other races online and looking at previous results and going like, hey, like I'm in a decent position, but if I realistically want to be competitive, I need to get substantially faster. I think I raced 2 more times that summer. And then in the meantime, one of my friends played on our university club rugby team. Like our university had a set of club sports that weren't governed by our athletics department because they're sports that aren't played at like we have what's called the CIS in Canada, which is like the equivalent of the NCAA in the United States. So any sports that don't have a CIS national championship aren't under the athletics umbrella, they're under the club umbrella. And the clubs are all ran by the students on the teams. And my friend who's on the rugby club was like, well, you should look into starting a triathlon club. And I was like, that'd be cool. And I realized that Triathlon Canada was looking at hosting their first ever university national championship. And I was like, well, this is perfect. We can start a team next fall, and then into the winter, we'll have this practice and whatever. And then next year, we'll be able to compete in the second one. But the first one ended up not happening due to, they said, lack of interest. And I did the only natural thing and hunted down the emails of every club in Canada that I could find, and every province's provincial governing body and Trican, and sent out this huge email blast to everybody in the country and was like, we need to do something. And I got like a little bit of interest from some of the schools in the West. And it took us a couple of years, but we ended up organizing the first ever Western Canadian University triathlon circuit that I kind of raced in only for one summer, because the second year I would have raced in it, everything was shut down due to the pandemic.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I kept doing age group racing. And I mean, kind of the point of your podcast, I guess, I ended up qualifying for my first age group worlds along the way. And racing in Lausanne. That was probably the highlight of my racing career so far, is getting to go to Lausanne and race.
Yeah, good experience. So just going back to qualifying for representing Canada, how does that, is it like in GB where there's qualifying races? And the other thing was, what distance did you qualify in?
Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure how it works, but my understanding is, like, Canada is, we obviously have Triathlon Canada that governs triathlon in Canada, and each province in Canada has their own like governing body that governs it regionally underneath Trican. And my understanding is that each province can kind of like bid for spots that Trican's allocated. And the province I live in, we're smaller, so we got 2 spots for each age group in each race.
Okay.
And then race directors within the province, I think, somehow get picked to get races. And I don't even know if I knew that the race was a qualifying race when I registered for it, or even understood like that was a thing that you could do. But I signed up for this draft legal sprint, and I think this was my second year racing. Yeah, it was my second year racing. And I would have known by the time I got there that it was a qualifier, because I meticulously read race packages. And at that race, because there was 2 spots per age group, you had to finish top 2 within your age group to get your spot.
Yeah.
And then I would have qualified through that race. I've raced that race twice, and I can't remember in my head which race was which, but I do remember like coming out of the water decently near the front, but like everything was kind of like, everybody's still relatively close. Both years I've raced it, kind of the same thing happened on the bike, where this guy I know who's a couple years older than me, so he would have been in the age group ahead of me actually, but we all raced together. He's this little bit slower swimmer than me, but a fairly strong cyclist. Caught me on the bike, and we kind of started rotating through, and we picked up a couple of riders as we were going, and ended up in like a group of 5 or 6. And nobody else was really taking poles off the front. So I remember looking at Mike and going like, we got to shell some people if we're not going to haul these guys to the end of the bike ride. So me and him just started dropping bombs, knowing we were going to ruin our own run, but we had to dump some people. And if I remember correctly, I know me and him came into T2 together, possibly one other rider. And I don't know what place I finished overall, but I must have been top 2 in my age group for sure anyways, because I got my spot.
Yeah. And what age group was that, James?
That would have been 20 to 24 or 21 to 25, whatever that age.
Yeah. And do you have to? You said that you didn't realise at the time it was an age group qualification, because over in the UK we've got to actually register to say that we're interested in qualifying at that particular race, and we've got to pay a fee. Is there nothing like that for you guys, or do you not have to do that?
So it's changed. The first year I qualified, just like at the award ceremony, it worked kind of like how Ironman does it, where they would just be like, hey, you qualified. And if you were there, you could claim your spot. And if you weren't, it would just roll down on the spot.
Yeah.
But the year after that, when I qualified to go to Edmonton, which of course ended up not happening, but that year you did have to pay like an admin fee and put in an interest, and you got an email like a week later saying you qualified.
Yeah. Oh, so you do it retrospectively rather than before the race?
Yes. Well, yeah. So it's changed now. Now you have to do it before the race. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So what did you think of your whole experience in Lausanne then? How did that, you know?
I raced kind of like garbage because I had done like a pretty heavy spring race schedule. And then I think I did my last race before Lausanne about 4 or 5 weeks out. And then I took after a sprint, I usually don't need a lot of time to recover. So I took a couple of days off / easy, and then got back into things, and then got like a sinus cold. And I was like, well, I don't want to carry this all the way through the world. So I need to take a couple of days off to take care of this. And after like 3 days, felt better. Started training again, trained for like 3 or 4 days. Started running again. That was kind of like my whole August. Like I couldn't string together any good amount of training because every time I tried, get sick again. So I kind of had to go fairly easy into Lausanne. We flew into Paris, I think, about 10 days before I raced. Spent 3-ish days in Paris. The first day we landed, when you fly from Canada, you fly overnight. So we got to Paris kind of like early afternoon. And I was Googling tracks because I wanted to go run somewhere. And I found one that wasn't far from the Airbnb we were staying at. And it ended up being like right in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. So that was super cool.
Oh, yeah, nice.
It was a weird track. It wasn't a full 400 meters. It was like 300 and some meters, but it was super cool. Like running, like the Eiffel Tower tipped over, it would probably land on this track. Like you're right there. It's super cool. So that was cool. And like getting to be in Paris, having never been, was neat. And we took the train to Lausanne, I think probably about a week before race day. And that was neat. Like we don't really have a train system in North America, and the one we do have isn't good and nobody really uses it. So getting to take the train was a little bit neat, and got to be a tourist a little bit, and then got to Lausanne and spent the last week kind of doing taper workouts, being again a tourist. We went to Geneva one day, and I'm a bit of a science nerd, so getting to go to CERN, the super collider, was super interesting. And then kind of race day rolled around, and of course nervous as always, and did my warm up. Was feeling surprisingly well considering my kind of crappy month of training and the fact I'd been a tourist for the last 10 days and wasn't really probably resting as much as I should be. It was a non-wetsuit race, which kind of freaked me out. Again, like I've become a decent swimmer, but compared to guys who are going to swim into like the low 10 minutes, like it was like any advantage I can get is huge. And I remember being freaked out by that lake too, because in Canada, all of our prairie lakes are full of a lot of silt and like kind of organic matter and whatever. Like sometimes you can't even see your own fingertips when you're stroking. but in that lake, you could see the bottom in like 40 feet of water. And like I could see fish swimming under me and stuff. And there's like these big weeds in that lake. And in part of the swim, you were deep enough, you couldn't see the bottom of the lake, but you could see these big weeds coming up out of the abyss. It was kind of like freaky.
Yeah.
But so my whole week that I was like doing training swims, I was like, this is, I kept having panic attacks in the water. And I was like, this is wild.
Yeah.
Luckily on race day, I guess it's like, you're so focused on what you're doing, you're not really paying attention to that. And I remember the course was like straight out, make a left turn, go along the shore, and then come back into the shore at a different place than where you went out.
Mm-hmm.
We hit the first corner, and I was like I was probably like 10 rows back, but I was like in the leading pack, and I was like, how am I this close to the front? And then going around the first turn buoy, the race kind of blew apart. I'm not sure how far I ended up back, but on the next stretch, the guys who were strong swam away from everybody else, and I kind of got shelled out the back. I think I swam relatively decently for myself for non-wetsuit. And then got on the bike. It's this extremely hilly bike, and again, the part of Canada I'm from is basically pancake flat.
Right.
Like I've started training for longer stuff now, and I'll go for like 100K training rides and do 40 meters of climbing in the whole ride. So like doing a sprint that had over 100 meters of climbing in the course of a sprint was crazy. So there's a valley not far from where I live, and I tried to do some climbing rides, and I think it kind of paid off. Like I rode reasonably well. I remember the lead pack from the race behind, who started like in the wave behind us, must have been the 25 to 29-year-olds, came blowing by me at like the 8K point. And I managed to get like stuck on the back of that group for like probably a minute. And then of course they went flying by. And then the second pack from that group went by, and I managed to grab them. And I just kind of did that the whole bike. Like as these packs of fast guys were blowing by me, and try and jump on the wheel and get sucked along as long as I could. And then eventually they dropped me, and I just keep going until another pack went by.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse, is there? There's nothing worse than being like stuck in no man's land on your own. You know, it's just awful. So yeah, that was a good ploy to try and jump on those packs and get some respite.
Yeah, so got off the bike, and the first chunk of the run was like you run along the lake, so it was pancake flat. And then I think it was right around 1,500 meters to a mile-ish. You turned up, because Los Angeles in a valley, so you turn up the mountain away from the lake and ran up this hill. And I remember thinking like 10 steps up this hill, like, I'm done. I'm going to have to walk. Like all of a sudden my whole race is like unraveled all at once. I think that was kind of like that month of junk training just kind of hit me all at once. So I was just like, didn't have the fitness to carry that speed anymore. I did manage to not have to walk, but I basically like power hiked up that hill, came down, was going up the second hill, and my friend Mike, the guy who I was mentioning earlier, who I raced with at the qualifier, he had started in the wave behind me because he's older, and he caught me going up the second hill, and my zipper on the back of my suit was stuck halfway down. And he goes, "Do you want help with your zipper?" And I heard his voice, and I was like, yes. Like, it was him unzipping my zipper at that point felt like a lifesaver. Just like getting a little bit cooler and kind of unrestricting myself a little bit. Got up that hill and then went down. I believe there was a third climb, and came down the third climb and ran the 2K-ish back to transit or the finish line. And I remember just the whole way back being like, this is awful. This sucks. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I was like, I quit. Like, I'm never racing again. Then I hit the finish line and was like, yeah, it's cool. Can't wait till next year. Like,
that's standard, isn't it? Standard after you have an awful experience and then thinking, yeah, I really want to do that again. How am I going to be better? It's just, yeah.
That was kind of the last time I have really raced, because the next year would have been 2020. And I think I did 1 or 2 sprint time trials on my own. And a group of like 8 of us did we just kind of showed up at the one park that we normally actually host races at the one Sunday and did like just a time trial thing where we did like a super sprint. Then we did a second one, and the second one we left based on our finish time from the last one. So the fastest guys started last and chasing. Then we did a third one that we did it in reverse order. So we ran and then biked and then swam. That was all I did really in 2020.
Yeah.
And then 2021, my plan was to race Edmonton. I'd qualified originally in the sprint, but due to all of the craziness of stuff being canceled and whatever, Triathlon Canada had a method of reallocating spots to people who qualified. So people who qualified in the sprint that didn't want to go to Bermuda could take a spot in Edmonton. And I had bought a TT bike and kind of fell in love with that and decided, like, I don't really want to do the draft legal and I don't want to pay the money to travel to Bermuda. And Edmonton was like an 8-hour drive from where I lived at the time.
Sure.
But of course, that ended up getting canceled. I did get to race twice or just once? Twice this summer. Yeah. I raced a sprint, and then, like I said, I kind of started really enjoying my time on the TT bike. So it was a really weird distance race in my home province. Everybody calls it a 1/3 distance Ironman. It's like a 1,500 meter swim and then a 62K bike and a 13K run. So I did that, and then it's kind of where I'm at now.
And how did that go?
Good. I finished second overall in that.
No, well done.
I got a little bit lucky. The guy who coaches me is an ex-pro, and he's currently in the process of working on getting his pro card back. And he cracked his bike frame like 2 days before the race and couldn't race. So I got a free spot out of that. Probably would have been third if Sean was there, but
hey, you've got to take it all, haven't you? Whatever breaks you get, Well, that's cool. I mean, that's an interesting journey into multi-sport, and you've had an interesting few races, and you've done really well to get to race for Canada at such a young age. Plenty of things to come in the future, I'm sure. Well done on all that. So you said in your email that you've moved to Victoria, British Columbia. And how's that going?
Good. I like it here lots. Like I said, I grew up on the prairies, and the prairies are, when you picture the cartoon of Canada with 8 feet of snow and minus 40 degrees Celsius and wind going 50 kilometers an hour, that's basically where I grew up. Yeah. Like, that was our winters. But the island is fairly temperate. Like, most days right now in the middle of December are 5 above zero, and we get rain lots of days, but you don't have to shovel the rain, so I'll take rain any day.
True. Absolutely, yeah. So you've found your way into any clubs or anything since you've moved, or how's the training going?
Good. So, like I just mentioned, I do have a coach. I'm still working with the same guy from Regina. When he was racing pro, he actually lived out here for a while, and he hooked me up with a local club, and I did some swimming with them. That session just ended a couple of weeks ago, and so I haven't really done much with them the last few weeks. I do work shift work, which has been a bit of an adjustment because I just graduated.
Nursing, right?
Yeah, from nursing
Yeah,
in April. So learning to adjust my training schedule kind of around that has been
yeah,
a bit of a learning curve, but yeah, things are going well.
yeah. You'll get into that, and it'll become normal, I guess, and you'll just work your training around work, won't you, in your life? So
Yeah, don't really operate on a 7 day week anymore, like not like Sundays or long run days.
yeah,
I training cycles kind of based on I work like so when I go to work, I'll work 2 days and then have 24 hours off, go
yeah,
back and work a night shift, and then I have some days off after that.
yeah, yeah,
My training schedule is kind of based around like the cycle starts kind of when I get off my night.
yeah,
Then I kind of do some bigger days when I'm off of work, and then when I'm at work, do some recovery days, and then doing my 24-hour kind of turnaround day, which is what I'm in today.
yeah,
I try to get like kind of some moderate distance workouts in with medium amount of intensity, and then usually the first day coming off a night shifts, I'm useless. So if I can get out for like a 30-minute jog and just get the body moving again and get ready to go back to work for the next set, it's kind of what I've started doing. It seems to be
yeah,
working so far. So.
yeah. Well, it's going to be trial and error, isn't it? Until you
Yeah.
and let's face it, these things are, from my experience, they're all ever changing and ever developing, and you've just got to go with the flow and do whatever works for you, because we're all individuals, aren't we? And what
Yeah.
works for you doesn't necessarily work for anybody else. So don't ever let anybody tell you that what works for you is not the right way of doing things, because they don't
Yeah.
know you. So good. Well, that's great to hear that it's all falling into place for you, and congratulations in graduating, and was nursing something that you always wanted to get into?
No. So, like I said, I went to university basically to run track and field originally.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew I needed to, if I wanted to run at a university level, I had to take something.
Hmm.
And so I started doing kinesiology in exercise physiology stream, just because I was interested in the body and thought it'd
Yeah.
be interesting and could maybe apply some of the performance stuff to my own life. So I started doing that, and then I kind of got to Christmas time during my third year of education. Got to Christmas time in my third year, and was kind of like, what do I want to do with my life? Like lots of people who take that stream end up going into like physiotherapy program, master's degree, or chiropractic, or occupational therapy, or those kind of things. But I was like, I don't want to do any of that. And here I am, like most of the way through a degree, and I don't know what I want to do. So when I was home at Christmas, my mom was like, oh, you should try being a nurse. And I was like, at that point, I was just kind of like, I don't really know what I want to do, so why not? So I
Yes.
applied to get into the nursing program, and I was like, I'm going to give this a shot. And basically, my plan was to try it for a year and see how it went. And took my first year of nursing and was kind of found a passion for that and decided that this is, I mean, optimally, I would get paid to race triathlon, but that's
Yeah.
so few and far between. So if I have to work a real job, it may as well be
Yeah.
something I enjoy, and I
Yeah.
like nursing. So
Yeah.
happened to work out, I guess. Got lucky.
Well, you make your own luck at the end of the day, I believe. Um, and it's not, these things are not forever. You can, not many people stay in the same job these days, in my experience, forever. So it's all just a pathway, isn't it?
That's the one big thing that's appealing in nursing to me is like I work surgical nursing now, like
Right.
post-op, but there's so many different areas under like the big umbrella of nursing. Like there's public health jobs that you work 9 to 5 in an office doing vaccine clinics and public outreach and whatever. And there's intensive care, and there's operating room and emergency room, and they're all so different under the big umbrella. So like you said, nobody seems to do the same thing for a long time anymore.
Yeah.
I have a fairly short attention span, so I can't see myself being where I'm at for more than a few years. So I'm sure eventually I'll want to do something else, but it's really easy to move around as a nurse and do other kinds of nursing.
Yeah, and never dull and never boring if things are, can move around and do things, different things each time. It's really good. So that's good. Well, good luck with it all, and I'm sure you'll do very well in whatever you choose to end up doing. And yeah, so we can go on to the. I've got a few quick fire questions now, and they're very, very straightforward. And the first one is, what's your favourite bit of kit?
I've been listening to your podcast a little bit, trying to prepare, and I've been thinking on this. I knew this question was coming. It's hard.
Yeah,
I don't know. It sounds kind of goofy, but I'm a big data junkie. So like things like Training Peaks, and even like I just use my laptop and I have spreadsheets everywhere.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't know, I guess my laptop is my most important piece of equipment. That's where my home base.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's a new answer. I've never had that one before. So congratulations on being the first to give that answer. But yeah, I mean, it is important, isn't it, to find out, we use our laptops for so much in training. Zwift, for example, and we use it for everything really. Like you say, Training Peaks or whatever. So that's a really good answer. Did you hear the fellow Canadian that I interviewed? Well, I've interviewed two guys, actually. One was a guy called Brock Gibbs, who's an author. I can't remember which episode he was on now. I
haven't. I just found out about you when you posted in that group the other day.
Yeah.
And so I listened to your first 3 or 4 episodes now. I'm sure I'm going to keep listening through them.
Oh, cool.
I haven't heard any other Canadians so far.
Yeah. Well, Brock, he's a guy that was on, and he's wrote this really funny triathlon book called "My Co-Workers Think I'm a Pro," it's really entertaining.
That's
so
funny.
if you listen to that one, it's he's on Instagram as well. It's that's a good listen. And a couple of weeks ago, I had Paul Larson on, who's the author of HIIT Training.
Oh, I saw the title for that one when I was scrolling through your page. I didn't realize he was Canadian. Yeah,
he's Canadian. And why I brought that up actually was because he's got a platform now called Athletica AI. It's like Training Peaks, but the computer pretty much plans your routine on all the information that you put in. So it's really cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, really, really cool. So it's worth having a look. That's the only reason I brought it up. You being a computer nerd and all that, you'd love it. You'd love it. So, but the podcast's really good. He's a really interesting guy to listen to. So there's a couple for you to get your teeth into.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So, what's been your favourite event that you've done?
Favorite event? I'm realizing I like the longer stuff, and I mean that 1/3 distance Ironman I did, I had a blast in. It's one of the most fun I've had racing in a long time. But I mean, that's the only longer race I've done, so it kind of wins by default. I'm sure once I start doing some other longer stuff, maybe something will kick it out of first spot. But right now, it's probably my favorite race I've done.
What advice would you give to anybody wanting to get into triathlon?
What did I read something the other day. It was like something along the lines of like, it was worded way better, but gist of it was like, use what you got type thing. Like, some people get into this sport and are convinced that like they see guys riding $5,000-$10,000 bikes and with all the fancy kit and the TT helmets and whatever, but so many people get like intimidated by that. But like, I mean, your first race, you need a bike. Like, does it have two wheels? You're good to go. Like, just figure it out. And I mean, it's an expensive sport. You got to be careful and like, don't want to blow your life savings on buying a bike and then hate doing it. So just enjoy yourself and don't get caught up in the equipment. If you decide you like it, you can start picking stuff up as you go. But
Yeah. Very wise. Yeah. Because a lot of people do get intimidated and then go out and buy like you said, an expensive bit of kit, whether it's a bike or whatever, and then pack in a year later. You can pick up some really nice bargains actually doing it. Yeah. Having a look on these secondhand sites, to be fair.
Well, I remember my very first race I did. I raced on that cyclocross bike I had that I threw some road bike tires on.
Yeah.
I remember rolling into transition that morning and just hanging my bike and setting my shoes up and whatever. And I was eavesdropping on this conversation. And I hear some guy compliment another guy's bike. And he goes, "Oh, yeah, I got it custom built when I did my first Ironman." I'm like, who the hell is this guy with a custom built TT frame? And I ended up beating him on my cyclocross bike. Like, so, I mean, like I was getting like in my own head, I was like, what is some guy doing racing in Regina on a custom built TT frame? Like, who is this guy? Turns out he was just some dad with
could afford it.
Who could afford it and bought himself a nice bike. And I mean, good for him. But I mean, in my own head that morning, I was like, what is going on right now? Like,
the kit doesn't mean anything. Have you heard the saying, all the gear and no idea?
Yeah.
That counts for a lot, I think. Next question is, what resources, like it could be books, it could be websites, or do you use for your training or for triathlon in general that you could like share and say to people it's a really good thing to look at?
Yeah, it's kind of changed throughout my career. When I first started, I didn't have a coach yet. So like, I mean, the local triathlon club was big and just talking to people. I found triathletes tend to be very friendly and love to talk about themselves. So
hence this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, if you take the time to just ask locals, like, oh, what do you do for this or whatever, and you can kind of pick up on the vibe of what people do. And I've heard people say this on your podcast, the few I've listened to. Triathlon&Duathlon was big when I first started listening. I remember him, like, when he wasn't even Triathlon&Duathlon yet, he was like A Race Terran or something like that. And that was like right when I started racing. He was just starting YouTube. And honestly, I think he's an incredible resource for the probably 98% of people that aren't at the very tippy toppy of the sport. I think his advice has kind of become below the level I'm trying to race at now. But for most people, I think he's a wonderful resource.
Yeah. And he's real, isn't he?
Yeah. I like him. So he lived in Winnipeg before he moved.
Where's he moved to now?
He lives up on actually the north end of Vancouver Island.
Right.
So I live on the very south end of the island. He lives up island somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where. But I know some guys from Winnipeg who all know Taryn because they train with him and race with him and whatever. And they all say he's like a super nice guy in real life too. And some of them have like bought secondhand gear off of him, or he's given them like Roka wetsuits because I mean Roka gives him a new wetsuit. He doesn't need two of them. And he just like gave a wetsuit to one of the young guys who's trying to race at a high level, and like super nice guy from what I understand.
Yeah.
But kind of now that I've progressed further in my career, I really lean on my coach a lot because I mean Sean's raced at a pro level, and that's eventually my goal is to race at a pro level. And also just like looking at what the pros are doing. There's so much info out there on YouTube. You can go watch Lionel Sanders or like That Triathlon Life with Paula Finley and Eric and But I think a lot of age groupers need to be careful watching their stuff because that's their job, and it's really easy to get sucked into what they're doing. So it's good to look at them and aspire and pick up tips and tricks, but don't try to do what they're doing because you're not them and you probably can't do what they're doing.
Oh, that's so wise, you know, because we all look at what the pros do, and even me at my old age, and you know, it's like, yeah, it's good for them, but like you just rightly said, that's their job, and they're at the top of their game, aren't they? So, but yeah, it's I wasn't really into the longer distance triathlons. I was more age group and more the Olympic distance and sprint distance and the ITU and that setup. Watching the Brownlees, obviously being a Brit, and you know how exciting the racing was. But the last couple of years, I've got into the longer distance, and I think it's because of the crossover between all the athletes. You know, you're getting like Blumenthal coming over and just wiping the floor with everybody and breaking world records, and Gustav Eden, his fellow countryman, doing the same, and it's just that crossover sort of like brought my interest in, and it's plus I think with Challenge Daytona as well, it's been more available on TV and making it more watchable, being on a circuit and stuff. I think it's pretty cool now.
There's lots of stuff like that, like between Challenge and Super League, they're really doing a push for making triathlon more spectator friendly, which is good.
Yeah, I think Super League's fantastic. Yeah.
Speaking of like the Olympic stuff, my very first memory of triathlon, I probably would have been, what year was Beijing? 2004 or 2008? Yeah, so I would have been 8 or 12 because I was born in 96. So whatever year Beijing was.
Yeah.
I remember watching the race on our TV at my parents' cabin. It was this little, like, probably 17-inch tube TV. And watching, like, this is a famous moment in Canadian triathlon. Simon Whitfield had been dropped by the leaders. And with like 500 meters to go, he threw his hat off and went sprinting and ended up finishing third, I think, in that race. He medaled. I can't remember what place he finished. But that was like my first triathlon memory. And I think thinking back, it's probably like ending up in triathlon was probably inevitable at some point, especially once I started running. Because after watching that, I always had like this keen interest in triathlon, but there was no access to it where I was growing up.
Yeah, which makes it all the more incredible. Actually, you've ended up where you've ended up. 2008, by the way, that's when Beijing was.
But it was, yeah. So it would have been 12.
Yeah. It's amazing how instances like that you can be watching, sort of like formulate in your head, and then, you know, lo and behold, a few years later, you're doing it yourself. So, and I think that's the beauty about the other thing about triathlon is that you can actually go to a race, and you can be racing on the same track and things as the pros are. There's not many other, you know, you can't go and play, soccer over here and go and play at Old Trafford, or you know what I mean. So that's the other beauty of doing triathlon, or you know. So did we answer the last question? We went off on a tangent. Did we answer the question about, I can't remember what your answer was, about resources? Yeah. So Triathlon Taran was one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then now moving forward, like my coach and pros and yeah.
So who's your favorite pro that you follow and you like?
I'm a big, like, I don't know. It's hard to say a favorite. I watch Lionel a lot. I mean, I wouldn't even say he's my favorite, but I like his kind of, especially like his race week series.
Right.
His kind of like trash talky stuff with Cam Worth and stuff I find hilarious. I grew up playing hockey, and like I said, trash talk's such a big part of hockey that watching Lionel kind of like bicker with Cam Worth and stuff, I find hilarious. I really like it's That Triathlon Life. It's Paula Finley and Eric Langstrom. She's a Canadian Olympian who's moved into long course, and he's her. I don't know if they're engaged or just together or whatever, or what they're. But he's a pro too as well, and he started doing some Xterra stuff.
Okay,
they're interesting. Who else have I been watching lately? Actually, I watched this guy on YouTube. His channel's called, I think, Working Triathlon or something.
Right.
He's actually at a very similar place in his life as me. He races with Team Everyman Jack, which is like a US-based age group team, but they're all over the country, and they're all kind of people who are at the tippy-toppy end of the age group field. And he's a very similar point as me. He's in his 20s. He's kind of at the pointy end of age group races, wants to start racing pro. I think that's kind of interesting to watch somebody else who's kind of at the same place I'm at.
Yeah, great for getting tips and, seeing things he's doing right and not doing so well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Good resource, that. Cool. So final question or questions. What are your short-term and then your longer-term goals?
So short term, this summer, I'm gonna do for sure 2 half Ironmans, possibly 3.
Yeah.
And really, my goal for those, I don't really have performance goals for those, but I just want to get my feet wet in the long course distance and learn how to race. I remember hearing you talk about this in some of your earlier podcasts about all of the dumb mistakes people make early on. I can't remember if it was you or somebody else talking about forgetting to untie their shoes in transition too. So
yeah,
getting off the bike and getting to put their runners on and their shoes were still tied.
Yeah, that'll be Brock Gibbs.
Yeah. And you got to make those dumb mistakes.
Yeah,
the only way to make them is to race.
Yeah.
I think that's my big goal for this year is to just get out there in the long course world and make some dumb mistakes so I can learn from them. And then long term, like I said, probably in the next 2 to 3 years, I do want to get my pro card and start racing professionally. I don't know how it works in the UK, but based on how it works in Canada, I could probably apply for and get my pro card now if I wanted it.
Right.
Because there's lots of races look at results and I would beat the guys finishing last in the pro races.
Yeah.
But the thing is I don't want to show up to a pro race just to get smashed out the back and not even be part of the race just to say I'm a pro.
No.
I want to spend another 2 or 3 years and get myself to the point where if I do eventually start racing pro, I think the guys like Blumenfeld and that are beyond reach, but at least I can be in the race and feel like I'm part of it and maybe get shelled after 4 hours instead of after 45 minutes.
Yeah, that sounds better. Yeah. Yeah, and it isn't a cheap thing to do, and they don't, obviously the guys at the top get pretty well paid now, especially with Super League and things. I'm not sure how it works in the longer course ranks, but it's not. They don't get a lot of money at the end of the day. It's not. They do it for the love of it, and they don't have the life of Riley. They don't have a high life, do they? It's because they love doing it. So yeah. Well, they're two, especially the longer distance one. Good luck with that, and we shall definitely. Are you on Instagram, James?
Yeah, I think my handle is just my name.
And have I got your second name right? Is it Lorenzen?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, my handle is just James Lorenzen, all lowercase, no periods, no underscores, nothing.
That's cool. Well, we shall definitely keep an eye out on how you're doing. I like to keep an eye out on all the guests now that have come on and see what they're up to. And Instagram's pretty much the place that I'm on, and we keep in touch with. So that'll be pretty cool to watch you in the future. So thank you ever so much for taking your time out to chat. It's been a real pleasure. Um,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Take care and good luck with
Take
everything.
care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye bye. Well, really enjoyed that chat. Um, could have talked on and on just about multi-sport in general. It's just so easy when you've got somebody as enthusiastic as James who comes on the show and has lots to say. But thanks once again, James, for reaching out and coming on. And good luck with everything that you do. Hope you manage to achieve your short-term and your long-term goals, especially your long-term goals. And we're right behind you. And yeah, good luck. So finally, our lifestyle hack, sleep. It's something that we all do, and some of us do it better than others. It's a thing that we all take for granted, I guess. Not a lot of thought goes into it. We just feel tired, go to bed, and hopefully get some good rest. But there's a lot more to it than that. I've read a couple of books and listened to quite a few podcasts over the years, and the first guy that got me really interested in it was a guy who holds a podcast called The Model Health Show, and it's Sean Stevenson, and he's had a few episodes on sleep, and he's actually wrote a book about it. And it just got me to thinking, well, if it's really important to aid recovery, then why wouldn't you look at actually what you do habitually? So the first thing that we started doing was trying to make the room as dark as possible. So we swapped out our normal curtains for blackout blinds, and that curtailed the light that was coming in from outside. So it's nice and dark now. And another thing that's said to be really good is not having the room too hot or too cold. And that's a bit difficult when there's two of you sleeping in the same room, because we're all different as humans, so we all have different tolerances. But we seem to have got it right. And being an old house, it's quite cold anyway. So sometimes we'll have an extra sheet over or blanket, and sometimes we don't need it. But trying to regulate the temperature, which helps you sleep, is a good way of helping. We also started drinking chamomile tea before we go to bed, about an hour beforehand, because that has the soothing properties, which also helps with sleep. And before we get into bed, we have a cream which we rub on our feet, and that's got magnesium in it. And again, it's one of those properties that's supposed to help soothe and help you go to sleep and get a better night's sleep. So, all these things you can only try, and those are some of the things that we are actually trying. I also read about half an hour or 45 minutes before we go to sleep, and that just switches off the mind. If you've got a nice good storybook, fiction usually, that really takes your mind off what's gone on during the day. And again, because your mind's not racing, it really helps just to relax you and take you away, as books do in general. And a couple of the other things that they reckon that you shouldn't do before you go to sleep are exercise, because that raises your body temperature, which you don't want. Eating, because that takes away from your body actually repairing and processing during the night, because now if you've ate something, it's got to digest and process that instead, or as well as. And alcohol is a big one. If you're having alcohol before you go to bed, although it helps you sleep and get off quickly, it can disturb your sleep, and I can vouch for that, because I've got the Garmin app which has a sleep part to it, and on the app it gives me a sleep score, and also it breaks down what type of sleep that you've had and how much of each, such as deep sleep and REM, and light sleep and awake time. And I can guarantee that if I've had alcohol, then my sleep score just plummets. I mean, I'm usually around about 89, and it'll plummet if I've had a good few glasses of red wine. It'll plummet down to about 39. So it seems to be accurate on that score, and that's a good indicator. If you've not got that, ability on your watch, or you've not got that app, it's worth getting, just to not get obsessed with, because obviously that could be detrimental also, but it's worth having a look to see how you are sleeping and what types of sleep that you're getting. So yeah, I think that's about it really. These are just a few things that we've put into place, and in the main we get a good night's sleep generally, and we feel quite refreshed the next day. We're not lagging round about 3 o'clock anymore, because that's usually when it hits you. So yeah, it's worth looking into, and I hope you've got something out of that, and I hope there's some things that we've put into place that you might think on and put in your sleep. I think they call it sleep hygiene, and get better sleep, and in the main get better recovery, because that's what we all want. So okay, that's it for another episode. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we shall see you next time. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can always email us at agegroupmultisportpodcast@gmail.com, and you can get in touch at Instagram at amp_1967. Drop us a DM if you want, or some comments would be really nice. You can get hold of us on Facebook at ampgb. You can listen to all the episodes on our YouTube channel, which is ampgb, and also our website, which is agegroupmultisportpodcast.buzzsprout.com. They're all on there. And we're on Twitter at Age Group Multisport Podcast. And yeah, as usual, stay safe, keep training, and love the process.